A huge storm is coming to the United States over the next few days, which will bring the return of significant severe weather, including widespread damaging winds, very large hail, and a few tornadoes. Additionally, major flooding will continue over the next few days as stationary rainfall will lead to several inches of rain in areas like Texas and also back in North Carolina and Virginia. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days, and we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And over on the East Coast, that is the remnants of Tropical Storm Chantal, which did bring significant flooding to North Carolina yesterday, including Chapel Hill, which received over 10 inches of rainfall. There were multiple homes that were nearly fully underwater, and a bunch of cars were stranded. It was basically a disaster yesterday for a little part of the state there west of Raleigh, and we are anticipating that rainfall to continue throughout the daytime today across Virginia, which may lead to more flooding concerns. Back over in the Great Plains is an area that we are expecting a big increase of severe weather today, including all hazards of severe weather. More rainfall is expected in Texas today, which could lead to more flooding concerns, but really the area to watch for today for significant severe weather will be in the central and northern plains, where all hazards of severe weather will be on the table. And then by the middle and end of the week, we are expecting some severe weather to return back over in the northern plains in the Midwest, and even a couple of significant events are going to be a possibility. And these were some of the sites last night across North Carolina, mainly around Chapel Hill, where we had major flooding occur. Multiple vehicles are stranded in that area. Almost every roadway near Chapel Hill was flooded last night, and this is another photo of a house that was partially submerged by water. This is obviously a very dangerous situation, and you want to make sure that you're getting on higher ground if you are ever in this scenario. But unfortunately, this was an event that was forecasted ahead of time. We did anticipate there being significant rainfall, and the major flooding did occur. Many areas picked up 8 to 12 inches of rainfall. Also, these photos were taken by Tornado Pagey. And the good news is that the remnants of Tropical Storm Chantal are now really fizzling out here across Virginia. We are expecting some more showers and isolated thunderstorms throughout the late morning, early afternoon, but generally speaking, the flooding rainfall risk is decreasing. There will still be a potential, though, through the late morning of some localized flooding, mainly across the southern and southeastern side of the state, where there are still stationary showers and storms that are really not moving very fast right now off to the north. And unfortunately, back over in Texas, we've had so much rain over the last 3 days, including some spots picking up as much as 20 inches of rain back over in central Texas, mainly to the north there of San Antonio. And unfortunately, we are expecting some more rain today. The National Weather Service still has flood watches in effect across central Texas, as we are anticipating additional rainfall today, which could lead to some more localized flooding. Good news is that this morning we're not really expecting a whole lot of rain, but eventually by this afternoon, more showers and storms will pop up. Any of these storms that pop up are not going to be moving very fast, so more flooding is a possibility. Be ready for a potential for localized areas picking up as much as 4 to 5 inches of rain today. I do think as we go into Tuesday, the risk of excessive rainfall will start to decrease, so hopefully by Wednesday this event is winding down. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, beginning with today, which is Monday, and we now have a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk of severe weather in place. This includes central Nebraska, southern South Dakota, into northeastern Colorado, where all hazards of severe weather will be on the table. Slight risk goes from Minnesota all the way back into Colorado, and the marginal threat goes all the way into the Texas Panhandle and into western Wisconsin. We also have a marginal threat from Ohio back into central Maine. So the biggest concern for today will be the potential for numerous damaging winds, which could be as high as 70 to 85 miles per hour in Nebraska, southern South Dakota, and even back into western Kansas. So be ready for significant damaging winds. Very large hail is also a possibility out of our initial supercells. We could see hailstone sizes as large as the size of apples from southern South Dakota into northeastern Colorado. There's also a chance for a few tornadoes. I don't necessarily agree fully with this tornado outlook. I do think the tornado outlook is fine here for the Central Plains, but I do think we'll at least see 1 or 2 tornadoes back over in North Dakota, western Minnesota, and northeastern South Dakota. It's going to come down to storm mode, but I do have at least some confidence that there will at least be some level of a tornado threat there later this afternoon into the early evening. So make sure that you're staying weather aware, have multiple ways to receive warnings. We will likely be live later today covering this, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live. And then on tossing trampolines on Tacos Tuesday, we have 2 large marginal threats of severe weather, one of which is across the central and even southern plains, back even into the Ohio Valley, where isolated damaging winds, hail, and maybe a brief tornado will be a possibility. And then we have a marginal threat from Massachusetts all the way back into South Carolina. So again, damaging winds and large hail are really going to be the main concerns with this event. I don't really anticipate much of a tornado threat. The Storm Prediction Center doesn't really have one outlined right now, but we may see a weird outflow boundary interaction with the storm that could lead to some sort sort of brief tornado somewhere here in the central or southern plains, so just make sure that you're staying weather aware. And then on Wednesday, the threat of severe weather continues across the northern plains and the mid-Atlantic, where more hail, wind, and an isolated tornado will be a possibility. Then by Thursday, we're talking about another northern plains event, and then eventually by Friday and Saturday, I do think the return of severe weather is coming to the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, which we're going to talk more about here in just a moment. So here's the timing for severe weather. Beginning with today, we are expecting storms to fire off right around 4 to 5 o'clock in the central plains. Notice how there will likely be at least a few discrete supercells initially that'll be producing very large hail, damaging winds, and perhaps even a couple of tornadoes, but by around 7 to 8 o'clock is when these storms will start to congeal into probably two different lines of thunderstorms, one of which will be going across the Nebraska Sandhills and also into northwest Kansas near Goodland, and then another line that'll be ongoing in far northern Nebraska and also southeastern South Dakota. These will be predominantly producing damaging winds, hail, and a low tornado risk, and then by 10 to 11 o'clock, these storms will continue to push south, eventually going towards Omaha, Nebraska, and then maybe reaching Kansas City during the early morning hours on Tuesday. Back over in the northern plains, storms will fire off a little bit earlier, around 2 to 3 o'clock, mainly back over in South Dakota and very far southern North Dakota, with predominantly a damaging wind threat here, but I do think there will at least be one or two discrete cells that try to fire off somewhere around Grand Forks or Fargo in North Dakota, which may produce the potential for an isolated tornado or two, but again, generally speaking up here, it's going to be mainly damaging winds and large hail. Definitely watch out though. I do think there's at least a chance for a tornado out of one of the storms that forms up there, and then eventually by the late evening, these storms are pushing off towards Duluth and also into northeastern Minnesota, where isolated damaging winds will continue, eventually falling apart as we go into Tuesday morning. And then as we go into Tuesday, we are expecting the threat of severe weather to continue across the central plains back into the Ohio Valley. Storms should fire off right around 1 to 2 o'clock, so a little bit earlier than it usually would be back over in the central plains, with damaging winds and hail being the biggest concerns. We could see an isolated tornado. Again, I think the risk of that is very low. By around 5 to 6 o'clock, we're just going to have a bunch of storms out there, a couple clusters of storms, maybe even a few discrete little cells out there, but a lack of wind shear basically means we're not really going to be talking about much of a tornado threat. We may even see a few hail and wind events happen back over in the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles as well during the late afternoon and early evening. By 7 to 8 o'clock, most of the storms are falling apart. So again, a lot of this event will be basically from 12 to 8 o'clock. Stay weather aware though, as there will be the potential for lightning, and obviously damaging winds and hail can be damaging. Back over in the Ohio Valley, storms will fire off right around 1 to 2 o'clock, mainly in the lower Midwest, with damaging winds and hail being the biggest concerns. By around 5, 6, 7 o'clock, we're just gonna have a bunch of storms out there around and just to the west of the Mississippi River Valley. Any storms that fire off east of the Mississippi River Valley will maybe produce 60-mile-per-hour winds at the worst case scenario. Don't really expect much beyond that, and then eventually by 8 to 9 o'clock, most of these storms are falling apart. So once again, the main event here for Tuesday will be from about 12 to 8. Hail and wind are the biggest concerns. Very, very, very low tornado risk. And then beyond Tuesday of this week, we are anticipating a completely different weather pattern where a high pressure system will be building in the mid-levels back over in the Pacific Southwest. But on the other hand, we're going to have these shortwave troughs that are going to be moving over the northern plains and the Pacific Northwest, which are going to be our next big storm systems. And eventually by late Thursday and Friday, we are going to have this one big low pressure system that forms across the northern plains, which is going to create a lot of wind shear, especially on Friday and Saturday, where we may be talking about the potential for actual organized threats of severe weather. Obviously, we have an organized threat of severe weather today, but this could be one of the more organized events that we've had in quite some time, depending on all the other small-scale features that we need to go right with this. But across the Midwest, also across the Ohio Valley, we need to be staying on alert Friday and Saturday for the potential for some significant severe weather, including damaging winds, hail, and even a few tornadoes. But again, a lot of stuff needs to be sorted out with this event. We do have a lot of question marks, including storm mode and all that sort of stuff, and moisture. But again, I do think there is definitely a potential for some significant severe weather Friday and Saturday. By next week, this weather pattern will continue to stay active, mainly in the northern plains, Midwest, and perhaps even back into the Northeast, with severe weather likely continuing into the middle and even end of July. I do think the weather pattern is going to get at least a little bit quieter for those in the southern plains and the Southeast during this time frame. So to put this into more simplistic terms, this is the future radar for the next few days. On Wednesday, we are expecting at least a few supercells to fire off across the Dakotas, with hail, wind, and even a couple of tornadoes being a possibility. Also some scattered showers and storms across the Southeast. And look at Texas, not really expecting a whole lot of rainfall there on Wednesday. By Thursday, more storms will continue, mainly up and down the East Coast, and then a few more storms will fire off across the northern and central plains, with damaging winds, hail, and even a few tornadoes being a possibility. It's going to come down to storm mode for the tornado threat, but if we have more of a discrete mode of severe weather, there could be a few tornadoes. On Friday, a more organized low pressure system system will form back over in Minnesota, and I am anticipating at least some scattered, if not numerous, severe weather on Friday from the Twin Cities and even Duluth all the way back over into central Kansas, with all hazards of severe weather being on the table. On Saturday, that low pressure system will likely move more off to the north, but severe weather should continue into Saturday from the Great Lakes back into the Central Plains, with damaging winds and hail as the primary concerns, maybe even a few tornadoes. And then by Sunday and Monday, we are expecting the weather pattern to still stay active across the northern plains and the Midwest, likely with at least one, if not two more storm systems to begin next week, with more severe weather possible in those same exact areas, northern plains, Midwest, and even back into the Ohio Valley. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We'll likely be live later today, so make sure to click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live for severe weather coverage. Next video will be way more detailed, talking about the Midwest and also Ohio Valley severe weather event that's upcoming, so stay tuned, and we'll see you guys all again in the next video or live stream.